Hello, YouTube. EdTech Ninja here for another episode of our innovation in EdTech in the light of COVID-19, in light of all of the educational changes that are going on, and the inclusion of greater amounts of technology in the lives of our students. Today's episode is about another software platform that I discovered um, that really is supposed to be used as a supplement for classrooms. It's not a classroom management type of situation. It's not the sole way that content is delivered, but rather a supplement to existing standards, national standards, state standards that are going to benefit students in terms of making them ready to become global citizens. This particular software suite, or you know, uh, just the name of the software is called the Global Oneness Project. It is a nonprofit project that is really all about creating conversations with students, between students and teachers, about universal values that humans have throughout the world. So it's really designed to kind of create cultural awareness with your students by telling them stories about individuals all around the world. Um, there's a great video that goes along uh, from the Global Oneness Project. I'll put that in the description below. But I would be remiss if I didn't share the first 30 seconds of their video, their promotional video, to kind of whet your appetite and kind of give you an idea of why I think this is such an innovative thing and ties into innovative practices that we've talked about in EDL 755. Give me a second to share that screen out with you. And where is it? There we go. Here we are. Okay.
Stories tell us who we are. They allow us to question the world around us and understand our lives, creating an opportunity to have global conversations while learning about the universal values that connect us all. The Global Oneness Project brings the world to your classroom with free award-winning films, photo essays, articles, companion lesson plans, and educational resources.
So really that sums it up. It's designed to really bring the world to your students. And one of the amazing things about technology in general and why it's so innovative is that when you think about it, if you have a device that's connected to the internet, you literally have access to pretty much every piece of knowledge that the human race has ever stored in some sort of either audio, visual, or written way. It's truly remarkable. And it's very important to leverage those opportunities for students because they are going to be citizens in a truly globalized world. We've seen just this past year how globalization and how interdependent economies are. Look at the trade war with China prior to the outbreak of COVID-19. Look at the outbreak itself of COVID-19 and the amazingly quick ways that it traveled from Wuhan province in China, or Wuhan city, excuse me, in China, throughout the world in a matter of weeks because of globalized air travel and business. So those things might change in the future, certainly, but our students truly do live in a globalized society and they need to be prepared for that. And I can tell you that as a student in a very cultured school, very cultured city in Boston, I didn't know the world around me especially well, even though I was very interested and sought out information about nonfiction text. And then I think to my students that I have here in the Midwest, where some of their parents have lived in the Midwest their entire lives. Some of them have not even ever been on a plane. Some of them have not left the state of Wisconsin in their entire lives. So they really have this kind of skewed perspective on what the world is like around them. And that's not preparing them for the lives that they're potentially going to live, or it's making their opportunities in the future far fewer, or you're presenting them with far fewer opportunities for their future. So it's really, it behooves teachers to bring in content that brings the world to the classroom. And that's one of the things that I do personally, because I was born in a different state and experienced life as a completely different way of growing up than my students have. And I bring that perspective myself into the classroom, but mine is only a single perspective, whereas this Global Oneness project truly allows students to get a cultural perspective from people all over the world. The cool thing about the software itself, I'll get kind of into the nuts and bolts of it because I'm getting a little far afield and ahead of myself, is it's available in both English and Spanish. So it has that bilingual aspect. It really is designed for students here in the United States to give them a more global perspective, and it acknowledges that Spanish speakers here in the United States are an increasing population of ours. I mean, locally, I would love to see something like a Hmong translation, or potentially a Mandarin Chinese or Japanese or Korean versions in the future for coastal states, because those are large populations as well. But it does recognize that English is not necessarily everyone's first language in a school setting. The Global Oneness Project allows for those lesson plans they talked about, or they have collaborative types of lessons. They have individual reflections based on those videos and photo essays and narratives that students are going to hear. What's really interesting about this, and it's similar to another piece of EdTech called News ELA, elementary and middle school educators and some high school educators as well, depending on the reading level of your student, know News ELA as a way of leveling the same material and standards to a wide variety of readers. And the Global Oneness Project does that on an even grander scale. They have lesson plans that are for the college level. They have lesson plans for high school, and they even have things that are differentiated to middle school and elementary school levels as well, based on national standards. Students love stories, right? Like, some of the things that I talk about from my youth and the way that I grew up are some of the fondest memories that students have of my classroom, is the stories that I tell about how different life is, or was for me in Boston, and living in other parts of the United States. And so I can imagine this being an amazing tool to bring that storytelling aspect, which is really an innate human activity and desire to kind of understand each other. And even Brene Brown talks about herself as a storyteller, even though she analyzes statistics. The statistics tell a story, and it's her job to communicate that to other people to have understanding. And this does it from a cultural context, in terms of how different cultures on the surface might be different, but how there are core values that all humans have, and that interconnectedness that we do have in really good ways. Learning by stories is one of the ways that, students can be both, they can have some genuine inquiry into the lives of other people. They can have empathy for the way, or they can grow those empathetic skills in terms of how other people around the world live. That the way that we live here in Wisconsin is not the only way that people live throughout the world. And there are other ways that are perfectly acceptable and different than the way that we live here. And also, at a real basic level, and teachers know that this is true more and more in classrooms, is that listening skills need to be developed. Students need to learn how to listen to other people and not think of themselves as being the center of the universe. A lot of technology, unfortunately, technology use, unfortunately, as a one-on-one kind of isolated activity. And at least with my own son and with students that I've seen who spend a lot of one-on-one time with screens, it kind of breeds egocentrism. And for students in an environment like small communities in Wisconsin, where they are very inward looking, that only further emphasizes kind of the egocentrism culturally and individually. So having them be able to listen to other people from other cultures who they might have to read subtitles for a translator or listen to a translator speaking in a different, translating from a different language is a really valuable skill. The other cool thing, in contrast to some of the other pieces of ed tech that I've talked about in this vlog, is that the Global Oneness Project is free. It's a nonprofit. I would be interested to see where they get their funding in order to kind of dig a little bit further in terms of if there's any sort of bias or spin on what they're trying to get across with that, and if there's any sort of conflict of interest from corporate backing or something like that. But on the surface, because it's a nonprofit, there doesn't seem to be a whole heck of a lot of hurdles in terms of cost that are impeding potentially trying this and using this in the classroom. I know that I myself want to try to use this as soon as I possibly can in my classroom in the future. I know that the next 3 weeks for distance learning, or for remote learning rather, have really been mapped out in ways that the fourth grade team that I work with, we should be planning together, and those plans we've already made, unfortunately. But the kind of freedom that we have as educators in Winneconne to have our own kind of class culture and environment that reflects us as individual teachers, I can't wait to introduce this as a way of kind of validating my own beliefs in terms of there are different ways of people live throughout the world, but to show my students that even in contrast to the way that Americans in the United States live can be different than the way that different cultures live and kind of relate to each other. So in that way, it might even tighten the bonds that the student feels towards their pride in terms of being an American, but it also could emphasize further that people live different ways, and that's okay. This is also an award-winning piece of software. So in 2018, well, rather every year, the American Association of School Librarians publishes a list of the best educational technology websites in ed tech, and this was an award winner in 2018 because of its ability to build those social, emotional, empathetic skills to open up the world to students through the use of technology, and to really see and hear the way that other people live. I can tell you from my point of view, I know that this would be okay to use in my classroom, partly just because we have a very safe school culture. It's psychologically safe to try things on your own. But I think that COVID-19 has further lowered the threshold and really provided teachers, at least in my district, the freedom to try things as problem solving, trying to deliver content in engaging ways to students that actually meets them where they are and is engaging and relevant to them. There was an article that we read for class from Educational Leadership magazine that stated that the key factor to developing collaboration and positive school culture is or one of the byproducts of that is that it makes for engaging and rigorous learning opportunities. Um, so the fact that there is trust from our administration for us as teachers allows us to develop those collaborative skills with each other. It allows us to have that positive school culture. And then from there, as a base, it allows us to really focus on ways that we can have those engaging and rigorous learning opportunities. And I can totally see this as being one of those because it challenges students. Cognitive dissonance is a healthy thing in a lot of ways for students when it's by design to really show them that their preconceptions of the way that the world is might not actually be correct. Um, and what a wonderful way to do that in a school setting without, um, a potential bias from a parent. I'm not saying that I'm more or less biased than, have my own, you know, preconceptions and things like that. But the fact that I am an educator and that I'm pursuing a higher education or pursuing higher education at the master's level, I have to take classes like social justice where I'm made aware of what my own biases and privilege are. And it's great because that class is actually the other class that I'm taking right now, EDL 729, social justice. So I think that I would be able to present those types of, uh, cognitive dissonance experiences where reality doesn't match what the student has and there's that friction. um, I think that I'm better suited potentially to do that, because I've received an education in how to do that in an unbiased way than potentially parents would. So not that teachers can supersede parents, but certainly that part of the educational experience is to have your own upbringing and your own culture challenged in healthy ways. And I think that this piece of software would be awesome for that. And lastly, the software and the approach, um, is not brand new, right? Um, I remember as a kid reading National Geographic, and that was the way that I was exposed to different cultures, was seeing those amazing photographs every month, reading those stories. But how much more engaging is it to have the actual narration of the people who you're learning about, to see those videos? I mean, that would have been so engrossing to me as a kid. Um, Even more so than just the print magazine. And the print magazine is beautiful, and I love print media as a former newspaper editor. Um, and the feel of the gloss and what they looked like. It's a beautiful medium, but that's not the way that students necessarily engage with their learning in the 21st century. So this is the next level really beyond that, which is really, really cool. And so a colleague of mine and I were talking about how we're noticing that our two boys are really becoming less and less engaged in their own learning at school, especially in these remote environments. And my colleague and I were asking, well, are we asking students to just complete tasks, with expected compliant behaviors? And is that what's killing their learning? Is that what's killing their curiosity about the world around them so that they want to learn these things? And to some degree, I think that checklists of things that they're supposed to do, and the fact that we have a very rigid, conception of behavior, or at least culturally in schools we do, individually we might not, but culturally, is that what we're expecting our children? And so, are we killing them as critical thinkers? I think that that's partially true, and something like the Global Oneness Project, which is designed to elicit those critical thinking skills and challenge students, is innovative. It's an innovative way to do that and to challenge students so that they're going to be better thinkers, they're going to be better adults, they're going to be better humans. And isn't that really our goal as educators? Sure, content knowledge is great, but having respectful, empathetic, emotionally secure and sound, developed and mature people once they're graduating from high school and moving on to higher education, hopefully, or a career. That's what we're really looking for. And the way that we can get that is through software like the Global Oneness um, portal. And I think that the exposure that they can receive from something like that is very topical and relevant, and the content is so contemporary um, that it really can it can reach students and have relevance to them immediately, um, so that they can be prepared literally for what the world is that they're stepping out into. And I think that that's important, especially in it's unfortunate that education is so highly politicized. We see, big pendulum swings back and forth in terms of what the goal of public education is, depending on the administration that's in the White House, and depending on the makeup of Congress, and even depending on the makeup of the Supreme Court. So, and also certainly at a state and local level as well. So to be able to meet students with something that is actually relevant and they need is very important, because it pivots quickly, and it allows those changes to be implemented very quickly, and for students to be prepared for the world that they're about to step out into. So truly a really remarkable piece of ed tech, a remarkable and innovative way of challenging students, their minds, and challenging their preconceptions of the world around them. So very exciting stuff. I can't wait to use it. I hope that you're inspired to use it as well. Anyway, hope you have a great rest of your day. This is the EdTech Jinja signing off.